Despite the girl's kindness, he couldn't help but feel that something was off. A certain something was apparent behind their eyes or in their body language. Despite Trevor's best efforts, there was more at play than what was visible. Instead, he decided to provide them with the best service he could. They might be cheered up by that, but before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. In serving the two young women, Trevor put all of his effort into it. His goal was to get them to smile at least once. They were a breath of fresh air after dealing with rude customers for so long. It was his intention to make their stay memorable, but he had no idea what was really happening. Sadly, he had found out too late. They spent a modest amount at the restaurant and asked Trevor to bring them the bill. In a flash, he had it ready and handed it to them before giving them some privacy. As he walked away, he saw them scrambling for cash to pay for their meal. The only thing he hoped for was an acceptable tip. Nowadays, it seems rare to find something like that. They finally finished their calculations and stuffed their cash into the leather cover of the bill, then got up and left. In order not to seem too eager, Trevor slowly meandered back to the table. Then he cleared their glasses and plates off the table and watched them leave. Finally, he was able to glance at the bill. Picking it up, he slowly opened the cover. He was dying of anticipation. Was there a surprise waiting inside for him? However, as he opened the bill and saw their final amount, he felt waves of frustration wash over him. He had reached his breaking point. He was tired of the same old thing happening over and over. There was something he was missing, though. A strange thing caught Trevor's attention just as he was about to lose it. As they walked out the door, one of the girls glanced back at him. It was a look of concern, as if she was trying to convey something. Suddenly, Trevor realized that there was more to this than a poor tip. Trying to understand what was happening, he stared at the bill. Trevor watched as the pair walked through the door and disappeared. There was only him and the bill left at the table now. Is he capable of cracking the code in front of him? Could he miss the bigger picture? His eyes remained fixed on the bill, confused as ever. They had left him a tip of 33.3. Their tip was oddly specific. What's the reason? Trevor examined what they had eaten and added up the total. Nothing worked. After that, he began to look around the restaurant. It was then that he noticed the numbers had a correlation. Seeing the tables in the restaurant, it all started to make sense to him. He panicked when he realized what was happening. What was going on here? In New Jersey, Trevor Taylor lived with his parents in a modest home. One of his aspirations was to move out, but he had not yet earned enough money to do so. To pay for his tuition and move out, he worked hard at a local wine bar. However, Trevor soon discovered that it was harder than he expected. However, the biggest reason was simply that most people stopped tipping. When Trevor first started out at the restaurant, on a typical Saturday night, he would earn an enormous amount of money. He saved it all away and felt like he would be able to move out in no time. But after a few months, the gratuity started to dry up. People started to tip less and less. He was now making nearly half what he made over the weekends. Trevor was beyond frustrated. He felt like his bright future was pulled away from him in a cruel twist of fate. But he wouldn't give up. He continued to work hard and thought that things might pick up. After all, seasonal fluctuations were something he hadn't considered. During the holiday season, he would get tipped much more. He hung in there for weeks. But trying to give the best service possible would soon burn him out and turn him cynical. He knew that most people hated tipping, but they didn't understand that he needed it to survive. And he couldn't spread awareness either. Imagine a waiter asking for a big tip. He'd probably get fired for that. Trevor was near the end of his rope. He put away the little bit of money that he earned. But moving out and going to college seemed years away. At this rate, it would take him an eternity. Was he willing to wait so long, or should he find another job? For now, he stayed at the wine bar, staying hopeful. That's when he saw them. It was a Saturday like any other. Some of Trevor's friends asked him if he wanted to go out with him. He had to sourly decline. They knew he had to work, but they taunted him anyway. He woke up at 9:00 a.m. to get to work and started his shift there. It was an ordinary day with tables everywhere, but he had no idea that two people were going to change his day. Even though the wine bar was busy, the competitive waiters and waitresses took on as many tables as they could. This meant that Trevor felt like he didn't have enough to make enough money by the end of the night. As a compromise, they told him that the next table could be his. Now, he just had to wait for the next patrons to come in. Trevor could be patient. He prayed that the next people to walk through the door would be generous. It was a Saturday night. Who wouldn't be feeling gratuitous after a few glasses of wine? But he didn't know that his next patrons were only around the corner. They were about to open the door and change his life forever. Like clockwork, Trevor's last table of customers paid their bill and left, but the tip was just 4%. They had been a table of 6 people and could have been a bit more generous. He was so fed up. But his next table would be something he would never forget. The 2 girls were about to enter the wine bar. Trevor was struggling to make ends meet. He was so sick and tired of being undertipped no matter how much effort he put into his service. It seemed like it was going to be one of those days. Then he saw a pair of girls come into the place. They sat down, and it looked like he was going to be the one to serve them. But he had no idea how it was going to end. The 2 girls had been kind enough, but he couldn't help but feel like something was off. He could see something behind their eyes or in their body language that gave it away. There was more at play than what was visible to them all. But Trevor knew he couldn't pry. He instead decided to try and give them the best service possible. Maybe that would cheer them up? Trevor put all of his efforts into serving the 2 young women. He wanted to see if he could get them to at least smile. He was so sick of rude customers that they were a breath of fresh air. He intended to make their stay there memorable, but he had no idea what was actually going on behind the scenes. He found out too late. The 2 girls spent a modest amount at the place and asked Trevor if he could bring them the bill. He quickly obliged them and handed it to them before giving them their privacy. He noticed them start scrounging together their cash to pay for their meal as he walked away. He just hoped he'd get an acceptable tip. It was something that seemed rare these days. After a few minutes, the girls were finally done with their calculations and stuffed their cash into the bill's leather cover before getting up and heading for the door. Trevor didn't want to seem too eager and slowly meandered back to the table. He cleared their glasses and plates away from the table as he watched them get to the front door. Finally, he could take a glance at the bill. He picked it up and slowly opened the cover. The anticipation was killing him. Would he find an unexpected surprise waiting inside? But as he opened the bill and saw their final amount, waves of frustration washed over him. This was the last straw. He was tired of nothing ever changing, but he was missing something. Trevor was about to lose it when he noticed something. One of the girls turned around as they headed out the door and glanced back at him. It was a stare of concern, as if she was trying to communicate something. That's when Trevor realized that there might be more going on than just a poor tip. He stared back at the bill, trying to understand what was going on. Trevor watched the pair continue through the door and leave out of sight. Now, it was just him and the tip at the table. Would he be able to crack the code that was in front of him, or would he fail to see the bigger picture? He stared down at the bill, confused as ever. He looked at the 33.3 tip that they had left him. It was oddly specific, but why? Trevor spent some time examining what they had eaten and what the total was, but nothing helped. Then he started looking around at the restaurant. That's when he noticed a correlation with the numbers. As he looked towards the tables around the restaurant, it all started to click in his head. But when he realized what was going on, he started to panic. What had happened here? It caught Trevor's eye. Every table had a number on it. That's when he noticed table number 33. 3 men were sitting at it. Was that part of the code? He decided to investigate the men further. Along with one sentence that the girls left on the bill, he would understand what was going on. There was one phrase on the bill. They had written, "This number is important. Once you figure it out, you'll understand everything." At first, Trevor didn't understand, but as he approached the table, everything became clear. He cleared his throat and greeted the men at the table. They looked to be in their 40s, but there was something familiar about them. Trevor mustered up his courage and said, "I got a note from the 2 young ladies that sat there. They seemed to want to point me to you guys." One of the men cleared his throat to speak. "Those girls are always getting into mischief just like their mothers used to." "Hi, they're my daughters. I'm guessing they didn't tip enough and wanted me to. Here," the man said before handing Trevor a 30 tip. It was incredible. He thanked the man and walked away. People could be kind. The men ended up being regulars along with their daughters. They ate separately, and every time he'd get the same directions for his tip.